black people, just get over it. Like, slavery was a long time ago, right? Why can't they just move on? Well, this is sort of precious coming from people who set off fireworks every July 4th. Because that's some old shit too, right? Like Independence Day, that didn't happen last week, right? We didn't break away from the British last Thursday. That's some old shit. But we're still celebrating that. So when it's stuff that makes us feel good, we love it. When it's stuff that makes us feel better than others, superior, like we're the greatest people in the greatest country ever struck off in the forehead of God Almighty, oh, we'll remember that forever. We just don't like the stuff that brings us up a little short, makes us look a little less than superior, maybe not quite as good as we'd like to believe. If you don't understand why the past affects the present, particularly around issues like enslavement, putting aside the inheritance of wealth and the lack thereof, part of which is certainly an explanation for why currently the median white wealth is 15 times the median African American wealth and 11 to 12 times the median Latino wealth. Certainly that has something to do with history, who had access to resources and who didn't. But putting aside that, let's just understand something. The only reason Donald Trump is president right now is because of a little thing called the Electoral College, which was put in place by folks. See, we got this revisionist history that we've been spinning for the last couple of months about the Electoral College. Oh, it was put in there to prevent tyranny. For real, you think? Do you really think that? Because I don't think that. Right? That might have been one of the things that folks were concerned about, but it was also put in because folks like the folks in Virginia, in the bigger slaveholding states, right, didn't want direct democracy or anything even remotely like it because it would have hurt them, because so much of their population was not enfranchised, right? So much of their population in some areas, 40% or over half of the people in some of those slaveholding states were what? Disenfranchised, counted as 3/5 of a human being, not considered people. And if you had anything remotely resembling direct democracy, those states would have been harmed by that. So in fact, the Electoral College was in part a compromise with slaveholding states, states who were dependent upon enslavement as a mechanism of economic development so as to improve their political position vis-a-vis non-slaveholding states. So if you don't understand how slavery, because this is the point, right? Even if you don't think racism was key to Donald Trump's own campaign, which, suggests to me that you might have been asleep for the last several months, even if you believe that, understand that racism in the 1700s, white supremacy embedded in the structure of the country at the founding of the country is most definitely implicated in his election, because without the obeisance to the Electoral College, without that compromise, we know he would not be president right now. So that is why we have to think about the past, and that is why the past affects the present. See,
another thing they always say is this. Black people, forget about slave trade era. Forget about what happened to you in the past. Forget about what happened to your forefathers. We're talking about now. Forget about it. The people you are seeing now has nothing to do with slave trade. They are innocent. You can't tell them to pay reparations because they didn't benefit from it. Stop there. Stop right there. See, we can talk about the future when we refuse to acknowledge what happened in the past. Let me say it again. The future will have no meaning if we can reflect back on what happened in the past. And this will always reoccur because when the white folks, the palm-colored people, the colonial masters are always stealing black people, don't worry. The past is past. Let it be bygone. Let's focus on the future. See, there's no future for the black people if they do not know where they're coming from, what happened to their forefathers, what narrative is being pushed right now, the agenda of the white supremacy that is being pushed right now. When you are telling them to forget about it, there's no need to, because they can't talk about their future without knowing where they're coming from. And guess what? A lot of lies has been told to the black people. Even some of the histories that are being taught right now has been terrible. They've changed the narrative, turned everything upside down so that the black man will not know where he's coming from. And that is why you see a lot of black people are having problems today, because It is the problem of identity. Welcome to my channel. This is Keisha's Watch. Subscribe, like, and share if you love this good content. And also thank you to everyone that has subscribed to my channel, that has been a part of this great community. Thank you for being there. Today, let's dive deeper into what black people has gone through and what the white folks are saying. And this professor is opening opening this canker that they do not like to open by saying forget about the past. No, he said no, we must talk about it. I'll be right back. Don't go nowhere.
Good morning, y'all. So I study slavery and the slave trade, and something that I wish I'd known when I was in graduate school doing a lot of this research is that really good history, if you are doing it right, if you are reclaiming the past, recovering the past, it comes with a lot of emotions. There are a lot of feelings, a lot of really difficult feelings that you have to sit with, and depending on who you are, your positionality, as they call it in the academy, on what your family history is, on how much you know about the world, those feelings are going to be different for a lot of people. And something that I wish had been part of my program, or something that I wish people had helped me with, were the intense emotions that come with uncovering essentially the receipts for a mass human atrocity, right? Like for my book, Pirates of the Slave Trade, I had to look at primary sources from European slave traders who went to Africa to traffic in human beings. And I spent years, like I got a Fulbright, I was really fortunate, and got to spend a year in the Netherlands looking at the records of the West India Company, the slave trading company. And I spent all that time reading the words of people who traffic other people for a living for a year. I just sat there in an archive and just absorbed everything, absorbed a whole year of people talking about other humans as if they were objects. And it messed me up. It messed me up. And it made me feel so many feelings, and I felt like nobody around me was able to help. So I didn't even try to go to them with the feelings because I felt like, my black colleagues, a lot of them who study the same thing, maybe could have helped, but I'm a white person. I'm not going to go to a black person for comfort about reading about how horrible racism against black people is, right? Like that was a no-go. Even I knew that much at that stage. Before I had read enough work, before I had done a lot of the anti-racism work, I already knew that going to black people for emotional labor about that is not okay. But then that begs the question, like, where do you go? And it's made me think so much about how so many white people have really big feelings about slavery, about white supremacy, about racism, about the deeply racist history of our country. And we don't have a place to process those feelings. Like, your emotions are in a place to harm other people. When white people have emotions, we have really big emotions, and often, depending on where we are, people will prioritize our emotions over the emotions of other people. And so even if our emotions are inappropriate at the time, there'll be people who will support us in the inappropriate emotions rather than help us to deal with them in an appropriate way. And so much of the work that I do now is really holding space for white people to have feelings, and to process those feelings, because, as with anything, the only way out of a feeling is through it, right? Like, learn that in therapy. And I think that so many of us don't have access to the tools that will allow us to move through our feelings and into a place of more rational, sort of compassionate care for other people. And I think that is truly one of the biggest problems in our society now. So I don't know why I made this TikTok, other than I want to hear from other people who have experienced this, or who are working on this. Like, how did you move through your feelings, and how do you help other people move through their feelings? So if you're still here, thank you, and leave your comment below.
Most people today first learn about slavery through the transatlantic or Arab slave trade, but that's one chapter in a book that's as old as human existence. If we really want to understand what slavery is and how it shaped all of us, we need to go back to the earliest records of slavery in Mesopotamia around 3000 BCE. People became slaves through war, debt, punishment. The Sumerians, Akkadians, and Babylonians had whole legal systems built around ownership. Also in ancient Nile Valley, enslaved people came from all over. Upper and Lower Kemet, Libya, Levant, and Far East. They built monuments, served in temples, and worked in agriculture. Others were literally buried with their owners. This was based on conquest and social hierarchy. Even royalty could be enslaved if they were on the losing side of war. In India, a Vedic text talks about dasa, a term that originally meant enemy or outsider, but became a marker of servitude, not racial, but social, economic, and military. In China, Qing Dynasty enslaved people came from within and beyond China's borders, prisoners of war, criminals, or people sold by their families. Then ancient Greece and Rome had massive slave economies. Athens, considered the cradle of democracy, depended on slaves for almost everything. In Rome, slaves were so common they outnumbered free citizens in some cities. Jews, Germans, Celts. The very word slave comes from Slav because so many Slavic people were enslaved in the early medieval period. Even indigenous societies in Americas, the Maya, Aztec, and Inca, all had systems where captives became property. So when we talk about slavery and only think of Africa, we create a false narrative that only Black people have known bondage, when almost every group on earth has been both enslaver and enslaved at some point in history. We have to understand how systems of dehumanization works, and when we only frame it through race, we miss the larger pattern. It's not just about who was enslaved, it's about how and why humans have kept finding ways to turn others into property.
I love this professor because he's one of the professors that has been speaking about what has happened to Black people. You can't talk about the future when you've not addressed what happened in the past. What actually happened? What actually happened? And this is what this professor is talking about. You can't understand what the Black people are going through when all you just go up to see, you see money available to you, you see wealth available to you as a white person, you see everything, the platter of gold, and you're able to get a house, go to good school. You can access anything you want to access, and you tell the Black person to forget about it, that it's gone. When this same Black person of a generation do not have access to finance, do not have access to good things, you can't even go to the best of schools because there's this segregation, stereotypy, agenda by the palm color people against the Black people, which has limited them, which has made them to be redundant, which has made them to be stagnated. And you are saying that they should not talk about slave trade era. No, they should talk about it. Because when you talk about it, you understand what was done, how it was done, and the repercussion on the Black folks. And when they understood all of that, they can ask, okay, what is the way forward? What can we do to better our laws? How do we navigate through the terrain and through the stereotype that has been placed on them? That is why they must know. And of course, another thing is the fact that even the syllabus that has been taught in school to the Black folks, Black community, you don't want to know it. They whitewash everything. They tell them lies, and the Blacks do not even know where they're coming from. They get lost, and you're saying that they should not talk about it. That is another dimension. The other dimension of reparation is another dimension. Another dimension of limitations and barriers that they've gone through and why they've gone through it. And you said they should not talk about it. They should not know where it's coming from and why it's coming to them. These are the questions that I love that everybody is talking about, that you can't but get emotional. That lady said, you can't but, that's a professor. She said, you can't but get emotional when you go through what happened to the Black folks. And when you now make it look like, they should forget about it, does not really matter. It matters. They must know what happened to them so that they can forge ahead. And also, the dimension of saying that they should live above they can't live above what has happened to them. You only live above when you've understood it You've mastered what happened to you, and you've provided solutions. You've provided ways of escape. You've provided, systems in place to yourself and your oncoming people after you, so that when they come, for example, an average white folks have money on ground to start a business that was started by his forefathers, his grandfather, his father. So there's wealth on ground for him to start any business. But a black person is not the same thing. He has to go through trying to raise fund again here by a bank and all that. And the bank will look at you, what is your background? Is there any collateral? Is that how am I sure if I give this money? All of those questions will be asked by the bank from the black person. But white folks, that's going to happen because he has money on ground that was transferred by his grandfather to him or her. You see, that's what I'm talking about. So a system has to be built by a black person, except few blacks who their father was able to navigate the terrain, not as though they have the money, but they were able to work their ass out to just have little. But out of 100%, what's the percentage of black people that have access to that? That can say, okay, this is what I have. I can start something. In a black society today, work from the scratch, from little, from nothing. And you're saying that the black people should forget it. That no, they have to talk about it. A system has to be built for them so that they can navigate. See, this era of going to bank and telling the black people there's nothing, it has to stop. They have to give them a leverage so that when they want to start a business or start anything, they won't say, where's the collateral? What did you have? No, because there's nothing to actually present. So the system must be built for them to navigate. And that is why we can say, okay, let's forget about it. I've not talked about reparation. That's another story from that time. Maybe that's what I'll talk about in my next video. So watch out for that. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for tuning in. I'm grateful for all the new subscriber. Thank you for all the comments. It's encouraging to know that you guys are watching my video. But please do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't. Share this video if you haven't. And I'll be grateful that you do that. Until I come your way again, this is Keisha's Watch. Bye for now.